Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's a gorgeous day. I'm really happy to see everyone. I'm Cara Robin, president of West LA Democratic Club, which is why you're all here. And it's going to be a really important day. This last series that we're having, the finalists, the top two they're going to be our representatives. They're going to lead us. So listen closely. Rad is going to actually post the candidate questionnaires in the chat that you might want to take a look at before or right now. But I just wanted to start, as we've been doing for several months now. I'd like to just take a few minutes of silence, a few moments really, to send positive energy communally to our fellow human beings in Ukraine who are still suffering daily and now living with the threat of a nuclear disaster, as well as all those suffering all over the world and here in our own backyards. Feel gratitude for being here today in your safe space. Feel being present and peaceful, and let that warmth emanate from you out to the universe. Please close your eyes, take a deep breath, and join me. Thank you. Thank you. So it's been quite a great week, for our president. The Inflation Reduction Act, AKA the largest investment in climate and energy initiatives to fight global warming, tax credits for renewable energy, reduction in prescription costs for the elderly, 15% minimum tax on corporations earning more than $1 billion was passed by the Senate and signed into law by President Biden. We have the CHIPS and Science Act, which is also a big climate bill, if you saw my email. The PACT Act of 2022, which was a little issue there in the Senate, on the toxic burn pits, how they totally did a 180, those Republicans who voted against it, and then, all of a sudden it's okay. And then how about Kansas? Oh my God, that was so awesome. It gives us such motivation and positive energy going forward into the midterms. We can do this. We need to help elect good Democrats here in California and nationally. And with that, I'd like to welcome the two stellar Democrats who are running for Board of Supervisors, Senator Bob Hertzberg and Council Member Lindsay Horvath. Hello. Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for coming. We know that you kind of had to sneak out of the bat mitzvah. We really appreciate it. And
yeah, I know. I got to take, Brad was in the middle of speaking and it was hard for me to walk out. We had Valley Beth Shalom for Molly Sherman, but he did a great job. And of course, he made sure that he brought special combs just for the bat mitzvah, as he did for his wedding, white combs. It's pretty fun.
Well, he's the perfect one to give combs, right? Indeed. Anyway, so the format today, first of all, I want to introduce Ingrid Van Eckert, who is our VP Ops. Ingrid will be moderating with me, asking you questions that are important to all of us. This is such a huge race here. And Louis Watanabe, one of our board members, a member at large, who will be doing timing for you. These are your best friends, the timer, of course. And here's Rad Naruzi, who is our political vice president. He'll be doing the spotlighting, and he'll be moderating the second. Louis will be giving you a 1-minute warning, then a 30-second warning, then a stop. And you'll have 2 minutes opening, 2 minutes closing, and 2 minutes for our questions. Bob, I know you have a hard out at noon, so we're going to get this going ASAP. We have 8 questions prepared. We actually have 9. And if we have time for the 9th, we will do that. Do I have anything else to say? Let me see. As I said a little earlier, the questionnaires should be in the chat box if anybody wants to give a look at them. And that's it. So I think we're going to get on with our forum. Are you both ready? Are
Yes.
you ready?
Just trying to get my yarmulke off.
Oh my gosh. Shalom. Shabbat shalom. Bob.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay, so questions. So the first question, Ingrid and I will be alternating questions. First, that we'll have Lindsay, and you want to do your opening statement, and then followed by Bob, and then we'll go on to the questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am glad to be here with you once again to speak about these issues that are so important to us as we look at this race. And I have to admit a slight insecurity. I just came from a community event myself in my city. We opened our recreational center, and one of my colleagues had the fun idea of jumping into the pool in our clothes, which was very fun and made for a great photo op, a creative idea, and we jumped right in. I guess that's sort of metaphoric of our leadership, but I'm glad to be here with you today, and especially on the heels of opening up recreational centers, creating green space, bringing people together in community. That's really what I have done as a local leader for 15 years, as a regional leader in Contract Cities Association, California League of Cities, National League of Cities, as president of Women in Municipal Government, and so many others. And it's all of that leadership I wish to bring to this opportunity to serve as your next supervisor for District 3, focusing in on the issues of homelessness and housing, how we keep people safe in our communities, how we get people back to work and good jobs that afford themselves and their families a good quality of life, how we deal with the existential threat of climate change and the ways that it touches us in our built and natural environment, how we expand our regional transportation network to make sure people are able to get the places they need to go and reduce our CO2 emissions while they do so. I am, for all of the reasons, these reasons and more, the work that I have done on these issues, I'm proud to be endorsed by the LA County Democratic Party, the Democratic Party of the San Fernando Valley, so many other organizations, and I'm excited about this opportunity also to talk about the important Supreme Court decision that changed our lives and how we can make LA County the place where women and pregnant people can get all of the full range of healthcare services that they deserve, standing in partnership with Planned Parenthood, who has endorsed me, and healthcare centers who will provide these services. I'm ready for our conversation today. Thank you very much.
Bob?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. You know, I, as someone in public service, the job is to get things done and to imagine what it could be and make it happen. I imagine what it would be like to have safe streets. And then I remember that morning when I was there in West Hollywood in the coffee shop, the Starbucks was closing, and a gentleman told me he won't walk the 3 blocks from his house because it's too unsafe. The woman was on television because she's too scared about taking her kid to school because she had to walk over a dead body, because there were folks that are against this idea of having let alone the homeless issue, but even a 500-foot buffer, and then tells us the story of how one of these motorhomes was on fire in front of the schools. Example after example of things that local government has just failed at. I've served in state government, not much longer than my opponent who served in local government, and we keep writing checks. We keep doing things in a very big way and get stuff done. And we delegate stuff to local government, and they say, don't bother us on local control. Our answer is, hey, just figure it out and fix it and get out of the way, right? We write you a check for $116 million for mental health at the county 3 years ago, and they've not spent a dime. And I talked to one of the people that endorse her, the status quo people, and they go, well, it was in Hollywood. It wasn't my district. I don't care, right? I mean, are you kidding me? Not only is there $1 billion sitting in the bank at the county, another $1 billion that's coming, and another $1 billion for training mental health professionals. The big difference, and for me, is whether I just spent, well, in the election, after the election with Ben Allen for 3 weeks, instead of running around and calling everybody and campaigning and promoting myself, I spent working our guts out to deal with recycling of plastics that we got done. Big, gigantic deal, $5 billion investments, making stuff happen. My frustration at being at the state is that we keep writing checks and telling people at the local level, and it doesn't work. We're doing stuff, we make stuff happen. So with that, it's time to stop and continue with the discussion on the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, since Bob, you're on a roll here. let's get to question number one. Homelessness, as we all know, is the #1 issue in Los Angeles.
Right.
What are your priorities for addressing our current homeless crisis and preventing more people from becoming homeless? And what have you done historically to combat homelessness?
Yeah, I'll tell you that right now, I by orders of magnitude took care of more people off the street by putting these grants in for homeless pets. $5 million one year, $10 million another year. I'm going to do it again this year, despite what they're doing, taking people off the street. A simple solution, not a bunch of political noise, but making stuff happen at the state level. Secondly, my big challenge here on the homeless issue, which informs a big reason why I decided to make this happen, is again, we're writing billions of dollars at the state. West Hollywood goes out and now says they're doing a building. Why? Because they got $6 million from Project Home Key. We're in a situation all across the place where we're writing checks. We delegate the authority to the locals and nothing happens. Just like I told you, the 116 million, we had $1 billion sitting in the bank, another $1 billion's coming, and another $1 billion for training mental health professionals. What's happening? So whether it's they're suing each other, they have this committee, this blue ribbon committee. City of Los Angeles doesn't participate. None of the other 86 cities participate. Why? What's going on? There's a gigantic leadership. The reason why the public only has a 22% confidence in the role of the status quo of what's happening at the Board of Supervisors, and they're just not delivering. I'm going to take responsibility, help create a board at the state level, so we end up putting people like the MTA where we hold ourselves accountable and throw us out of office if we don't make it happen. And old-fashioned getting it done versus this finger pointing or moving people from one city to another, which is just insane when your homeless population is between 30 people and 100 people, and we say, oh, we're fixing homelessness. Everybody knows it's not being fixed. Look at what's happened in the last 10 years. It makes my heart sink. I don't know how my daughter, how am I going to take her to preschool under these circumstances? It's horrible. And I'm going to get in. I'm not running for their office. I'm not dancing. I'm not calibrating my message depending upon the audience. I am who I am, and I'm going to fight like hell to deliver.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Thank you. And apologies in advance if you hear Winston in the background, the nuances of doing Zoom from home. I appreciate the senator's frustration on the issue. And more. And we do that through street teams that go out and actually meet people where they are, bring services that we fund. We actually haven't been getting the support from other levels of government that we've needed. So we've had to step up ourselves, so sorry, and make sure that we deliver. We actually hire people who themselves were formerly unhoused, that we provide them employment opportunity. They build trust on the streets and share information about the services that are available. We provide transportation, housing, connect them to addiction recovery services, mental health services, and so much more. That's the kind of planning and service and care that we need to provide. We also have an inclusionary housing policy that has led to the construction of permanent supportive affordable housing in my community. So people who have needed those resources and services in our city have been able to get them right in our own city. And we track who we serve. So unlike the stories that we've heard about people being pushed over borders, we actually provide that service, care, and follow through to make sure that people are supported all the way through. And I know this because a man named Jeffrey was once sleeping on the steps of my campaign office in 2011. I stuck with him, got him into our affordable housing services, connected him with services and support. He's now employed, living in permanent supportive housing in my community with his dog because we provided that shelter for him. There are so many stories like that that I have been able to directly impact through our work in my community. We have a plan that can scale to LA County because we work with the services and support that the county contracts with as well. We just need to make sure that the county's resources don't get stuck in the loss of bureaucracy and actually get to the places where they're needed in our communities.
Hey, Kara, is it appropriate? If it's not, it's okay. Can I follow up on a couple of those claims? Is it a prayer? If you don't want me to, I won't.
You're the one with the heart out, Bob. So
I got time. I got a little bit more time. I'm okay.
You
I
know
don't
what?
I know.
Let's,
Okay, go ahead.
let's go on and then
Okay.
make a note and take it up in your closing remarks. Okay, thanks. Ingrid.
Okay, next question. Do you have a plan for lowering the cost of building homeless housing so we can build more for less?
Lindsay.
Yes, we have worked with nonprofit developers in our community to actually lower the cost per unit in developing housing. Right now, we have worked with some nonprofit developers who have been able to reduce the cost of housing down to something like $200,000 per unit, 250. And it's through partnerships, through eliminating some of the bureaucracy that slows down housing production for the kinds of housing that we need, by developing policies that are informed by community, that the community has agreed on, and identifying places in our community where this housing is agreed upon to be located. I know oftentimes when developers have come into our communities just looking to make a profit, we've seen how community has stepped up, rightly so, to say there is development that is appropriate and there's development that's not. In our community, we've worked very hard to meet our RENA numbers, to make sure that we are providing housing, all types of housing for all different levels of people who need housing in our community and the region. And that's what we need to do more of. We've had success doing that, and I want to bring that success to the county so we can address our housing crisis, which contributes to our homelessness crisis. But we also, so it's sometimes through public-private partnerships, sometimes it's through the policies that we set and setting aside funding for an affordable housing trust fund, which we've done in my community. And I would like to see the county continue to set aside funding that helps to create more housing options. And that's what Measure H was intended to do. But I hear consistently that not everyone has seen what Measure H has delivered. And we have to make sure that those dollars are visible and making a difference in communities if we expect those dollars to be continued by our voters. We know they're desperately needed, but we have to make sure that we're delivering on the promises that were made when we asked for them. And so it's through that relationship with our voters, with our community residents, that we'll be able to continue that funding and make sure that there are housing options available for everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, the Measure H and HHH, people, it's just embarrassing what's happened with respect to that and all the money that we spent and how it's been executed. But look, there are four major costs dealing with any time you're dealing with any kind of housing. We have two kinds of houses. What's the cost of the land? What's the regulatory time costs and the like? What's the building cost and what's the labor cost? Those are the things. What I've been working on like crazy is land, surplus land, government land, stuff that you can get rent for $1 a year. Second thing you do is if the state were to work out a deal with a non-for-profit person, and I've been working on this right now, you can basically get the benefits of the state in terms of some of the expedited environmental review. I have surveyed over 3,000 parcels of land in the valley through my intern network because I wasn't waiting for government to take action. I identified 198 parcels of where we can put stuff in. There is so much stuff. I just got a survey from the county, which was ridiculous. Another one of the ridiculous things that they get that says we only have 497 acres of land, which is absolutely not the case. We have so many parking lots and other places. So I'm going to focus on surplus land to reduce costs, surplus lands. That's on the rental side. On the ownership side, I've been working for the last year and a half with lawyers and with the former legislative council and a whole host of other experts on a $25 billion bond where we use investment dollars for home ownership. One of the biggest problems that we face in this place is the rich-poor divide, the wealth gap. We have to give an opportunity for people to build wealth, and home is where the wealth is. And the focus to me is long-term, not just the short-term stuff. So A, dramatically to reduce costs in terms of land, just lease land, $1 a year from government land, and B, home ownership. And all I want to say is that as we look to our respective records, which is important, the city that my opponent's from has the second highest rental rates because people are moving out of our city because there isn't affordable housing for purposes of that. And the last thing, I really am believing in the near-term transitional housing stuff of Hope of the Valley, what they've done, 2,200 units. It's fantastic. It's an important step of getting people off the street and get into some kind of housing.
Thank you. Okay, Bob, you continue. Recently, The LA Board of Supervisors voted 4-1 to put a measure on the November ballot that would amend the county charter to give the board the power to remove a sheriff for serious violations of the public trust. What is your perspective and position on this measure? And how would you address the inequity in the sheriff's department right now?
Well,
Bob.
because there's two separate questions. The first question is, look, I just think it smells political, okay? Look, I take long-term think about these things when we make these kinds of reforms. I was big involved in the charter reform movement and borough systems and all sorts of stuff, and think through longer. This thing coming out like this under these circumstances, look, I don't like this sheriff. I didn't support him. I don't like him. But I don't think you make decisions like that. I haven't been successful in Sacramento by building bridges among people of all parties and backgrounds in all parts of the states, not in a homogeneous community, to build those relationships. And I don't like how it works. Now, there is a bigger question. We passed in 1978 in California a proposition on a 60-some% vote by the people requiring the election of re-election of super sheriffs, even in charter counties, which is what we have. I know San Bernardino has an issue with this, but I generally don't like it. The equity issue in terms of the sheriff's department, I mean, look, I don't know how much the Board of Supervisors has a role in terms of that because he's separately elected under the current laws, but it is a significant problem. I have been involved with the sheriff's office for many years with Lee Baca. I know he had challenges, but I don't cut and run for my friends. I like him. He was a decent man. He had a problem. I was very strongly supportive of Jimmy McDonnell in terms of trying to build efforts there. And I just think that I've talked to ALADs, law enforcement have endorsed me in terms of those very issues of trying to increase diversity and sensitivities and the like in the department. There are challenges. You know, law enforcement has a real value. It's critically important to people to feel safe on the one hand. Yet on the other hand, we've got to make sure that there's equity and fairness and criminal justice reform, which I can talk about if you have one of those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Lindsay.
I think that we need to hold our sheriff's department accountable, and I'm supportive of efforts to do that. It would be great to see the sheriff actually have to be hired by the county board in the same way that the fire chief has to be hired by the county board. So there's more of a willingness and relationship to work together. But I also think that that's up to the voters, and that's why it's going to the ballot. I personally do not want to see this sheriff continue. I know that my opponent is endorsed by all of the law enforcement associations and has been campaigning with the sheriff, and the sheriff supports him. But I think we need more accountability in the sheriff's department, which is what I have worked towards. And I work with our local station in the sheriff's department and have insight into that. I also served as president of California Contract Cities Association, where I have also served on the Liability Trust Fund Claims Board and Oversight Committee. And we're the board that hears all of the deputy involved cases. And I can tell you from personal experience, the countless dollars that are spent on deputy involved incidents that cost us a lot of money, public trust, and sometimes people's lives. We need to dig in and root out the problems that exist in our sheriff's department and make sure that we restore public trust in law enforcement, because we need strong partners in law enforcement to help keep our communities safe. We need to make sure they have the resources they need to fight violent crime and address the issues that are causing concern in our neighborhoods. And they shouldn't be, those causes of concern shouldn't be coming from the sheriff's department. We should be working with our law enforcement professionals to solve them. I also believe we need to enhance the services and support that we provide to our law enforcement officials through things like unarmed security ambassadors who can help de-escalate situations that don't require law enforcement involvement. I also believe we need to invest in mental health professionals, which is why I created the contract for the county for cities to use mental health professionals in partnership with our law enforcement called mental evaluation teams, the MET teams, to make sure that they are directly invested in our communities. We have one dedicated in our community because of my leadership, and I believe more communities need that kind of resource full time.
Yeah, I do want to deviate a minute. Bob, I saw, Bob, you had a big reaction to the sheriff campaigning question. Do you want to just clarify for a second?
I've seen this man in my entire life. I've seen him twice in person. Once when I was on stage for the swearing in of a senator, And once I was at an event in the San Fernando Valley when he was campaigning and showed up. I don't know if I can identify, I guess I can see him because I've seen him on TV, but I don't know him and have no involvement with him, period. I don't know what she's talking about. That was my reaction, because it's like, okay, we all say things in politics, but that one's a little off the charts.
Okay,
I don't support him. I
So you're not campaigning with him, I think that's.
I
what-
never met, I never been there. Just,
Okay.
you know.
Okay, thanks.
All right,
Next question, Ingrid.
next question, and I believe it's to Lindsay, right?
Yes.
All right, the council has a motion pending to create its own public health department. Do you believe the County of LA has done an adequate job addressing the public health needs of the city of LA? Or would you support the city creating their own public health department?
Well, I think it's certainly a worthy conversation. I know that at the height of COVID, many of the smaller cities had conversations about how could we, whether it made sense for us to start our own regional public health departments in partnership with each other, because we saw that the public health department of the county was reacting with a broad brush in response to what was a public health crisis. And during a time of emergency, they were doing the best they could to address what they could at the time, but we must learn from that experience. And what I hope is that moving forward, we don't create more bureaucracy and dilute and create confusion and directives, but instead we work in conjunction with one another, and that we delegate authority regionally under the leadership of the public health department in the county. So that way public health officials that whether it's during a time of crisis, God forbid, like we just experienced, or just day-to-day things, like I've heard from some of our hospitality businesses. They said that when public health officials come and do inspections, they give them a list of things, they meet that list of things, and then when they come back for review, a whole new list of things is identified because it's a new person who isn't tracking what was asked before. We need to have some continuity, we need to have some reliability, and we need to have understanding of the different communities that exist within LA County to make sure and have that understanding exist within the public health department, so that way there's regional leadership that makes sense and can be consistent and have continuity. I think that's the way to get the change that is needed to respond to where there was difficulty with the public health department during this time of crisis. And crisis always expose where our gaps are. And so we need to learn from them. That's why in my own community, we did an after action plan, identifying all the things that we did to help support community, providing meal delivery services, getting people into housing, the reforms that we did to help businesses stay open, because part of keeping people healthy is keeping them out of poverty and making sure they have a wage and a decent living wage. So those are some of the things that I think we need to be looking at with the health department going forward.
Senator?
Thank you so much, Ingrid. Yeah, look, I agree with my opponent with respect to this issue of people coming back and keep changing the game. It's a big problem. But I'd like to address this a little in a larger issue. I don't really think we need a serious. Long Beach had its own public health department, and it becomes problematic. It was the failure of the county, and I would also suggest the failure of the supervisors. When you're a boss, whether you're a company or not-for-profit or whatever it is, you take advice from your experts, whoever they may be, and then you exercise your judgment, weighing all the factors. That's the right thing to do for all of us. And I saw this all across the state with other counties in Sonoma County and Monterey County and other counties where the supervisors were just too scared because of the circumstances to take a leadership role, and they just delegated everything. And this is the old statement: if your purpose of a ship is to make sure it never gets destroyed, you never take it out of port. There's other interests, and they wouldn't engage. And I would suggest that yes, the pandemic was horrible and terrible, but a lot of what happened, whether it was just this top-down management, like when we talked about the sheriffs not wearing masks or the firefighters or whatever, it's just like these commands from on top, rather than listening to folks. I talked to all the labor people. That's why every single union in the labor feds endorsed me, because they're sitting there and they're so frustrated with the status quo at city. Even those are Democrats, there are people, they're frustrated because they don't listen to them. They don't come to their office. They won't talk to them. You got to go online. You've got to talk to a staffer. It's so bad. And I would suggest that the whole issue with public health has manifested that. I saw it statewide, because there was the counties where there were leadership and there was an involvement by elected leaders who represent people to have their voice, and the businesses to have their voice, versus just knee jerk whatever the person says who's in that job, whether they have credentials or not. I don't begrudge their advice, but at the end of the day, it's just advice.
Okay. So, Bob, what should the county do to support and strengthen the benefits and pay for IHSS caregivers?
Well, I support 20 for 20. I just did a press conference yesterday. I have a bill for $1 billion. Well, first of all, in the community clinics, we have a gigantic problem. And I did a bill on that, couldn't get the money, was out at a press conference to get pay for these workers. I'm going to support and vote for, and told these guys I would vote for an increase in their pay. If you just step back for a minute, actually, you know, I know no one likes the history and try to criticize you, but I was there in the beginning with Gloria Molina when we first had the first IHSS contract. I got her to vote for it. It took a year to get it done. This is such an important delivery system. People get to stay in their homes, the comfort of their homes with their families. These people coming in, who, when we were working on this stuff with BizFed and stuff with and SEIU, they didn't have any protection. They had to wear plastic bags. And yet the values they bring, they did it in my own home with my father-in-law, who was there for many years, living with us for many, many years. So no, I will support them. I will support the contract. I think it's the right thing to do. We have extra money. This idea that we don't have money because of property tax, we're in good shape in terms of the county, and in addition, the state's willing to help. So no, I think it's the right thing to do. It's smart for taxpayers' purposes, smart in healthcare delivery, and I'm all in. You know, and I've been in with them for decades in every one of these fights. I don't just get out in the line and do you know, protests or whatever. I'm somebody who's actually making it happen. I have to work with the diverse interests of groups at all corners of the state, all the other interest groups that want money for other reasons, right? I'm now just right now working on the hospitals and SEIU in a process to get $25 an hour quietly behind the scenes. I'm not calling press conferences on this stuff. I just make it happen, get it done, just like Ben Allen and I did, you know, with plastics, and we've done it in so many other areas of the law. And that's why I'm so frustrated, because we give all this money to the county, and I sat with the county. I said, guys, we'll give you the money. Will you give it back to us if you don't succeed? Will you know, write a check? Here's the money. Solve the problem. When you go buy a camera, you get it back. You get your money back. Give us our money back. That went over like a lead balloon.
Okay, Lindsay.
Yeah, this is an important topic because as we look at our aging population growing exponentially, how are we going to care for our aging folks and keep them in a community that is familiar? I know this is something that we experienced in my own family. And when we had in-home caregivers come to help take care of my grandparents as they aged, so we could care for them and provide them the support they needed that we couldn't provide. Those people in our home who provided those services became part of our family. And so when I think about this issue, what does it cost? You know, what are we willing to pay? And what sort of value can we put on a circumstance like that when we are caring for our family members? It's why I led the fight for hero pay in the face of COVID for our frontline workers. It's why I led the fight in my community to provide extra protections for our frontline workers. It's why I've stood strong with the workers outside Cedars who were fighting for an increase in wages and support when they were faced with a difficult contract negotiation. I don't diminish the importance of protest. I don't diminish the importance of raising voices, because that actually delivered results. And I don't have to come in and tell people to do that. What helps is standing in solidarity with the people who are fighting for their own dignity and work in their workplaces and in the ways they work and the ways they make their wages. We need to uplift their voices and support and stand in solidarity. We need to raise the wage, which I did in my community. We now have the highest minimum wage in the country. We guaranteed paid leave for folks and making sure that those people who are providing care and who are working in our communities can themselves be cared for and taken care of and provided mental health support and all the things that we talk about for those most in crisis. We need to provide that for the people who are also providing care in our communities.
All right. I think it's Lindsay again, right? Lindsay, what changes would you propose, if any, to the county foster care system?
Well, I think one of the things that Supervisor Mitchell, who has endorsed me in this race, one thing that she has done is asked for data collection on how services and support are provided in communities of color and communities that are typically not able to access the services and support they most need from the county, as the county is our social safety net. So how do we act upon that data that is being collected from the county and make sure that the services are getting to the people who need help the most. We need to also make sure that the regional offices that are providing, I think there are about 19 offices throughout the county that people can turn to get support, that they are not only accessible after you've been reported on, but instead, how do we make sure that families are provided with the resources and support that they need, and they can proactively go to the county to get the support and care that they need for their families and in order to take care of them. I think another thing that we have to think about is, in a de facto way, extending the services and support of the foster care system by thinking about maybe co-locating housing for people who are exiting the foster system because of their age, but co-locating housing perhaps near community colleges so we can help encourage them to continue their education, also co-locating trade instruction and training so that way they can get into jobs that afford them a good quality of life going forward and help to provide that continued structure, support, housing, and meet the needs that they have as they come out of the system, because just because the county has determined by their age they're no longer in the system doesn't mean they don't still need the structure and support to be able to be on their feet as they exit that system. So those are some of the changes that I would like to see most immediately, and I want to listen to the community in ways that they say they would like to see changes happening as well.
Wow.
These are our kids. If you think about it for a moment, these are our kids. We in the government, when one of the supervisors who I'm seeking to replace says about the sheriff's thing, that we're looking at other potential jobs that should be dealt with. We don't kill people, sheriff does. Well, we kill kids. That was unbelievable. I have spent McLaren Hall, I've spent so much time on this issue over so many years, and it's still horrible. Whether it's the issues of these kids, all they have is a trash bag to take their stuff. I remember with Nancy Reardon, we went and got them suitcases, whether it was changing the date from 18 to 21, whether it was providing the services. It is a mentality about not treating them like government. This is a completely qualitatively different aspect of the county. There's so many other things that we provide in social services, but nothing is like foster care because they're our responsibility. They're our kids. So all of these cockamamie rules, you take care of them, whether it's to 26, you manage them through every part of the process. Look at the numbers of the people that are homeless once they get out of the system. They go directly to the streets. Look at what happens on substance abuse in terms of what's going on with these kids. I'm just reading this book, talking about the very same thing, The Least of Us by Sam Quinones. It talks about this in terms of what's happening now with the drug addictions and these kids that are just, so no, this is not some small ball thing to me. And how do you do it? You literally, I know I got 30 seconds to answer a problem that's so gigantic, it makes my head explode. But the point is that at every single level, whether it's providing every service and manage them through the process and taking care of them, but it's all about how we approach this and how we think about it. This is just not a government department. These are our children.
Thank you. All right, next question. It's kind of wordy, but Prop 63, the Mental Health Services Act, or the Millionaire's Tax, passed in 2004 and has generated $29 billion so far. Yet LA County is not meeting our mental health needs. We see on a daily basis so many of our unhoused neighbors suffering from severe mental illness and just wasting away. What do you plan to do concretely to get these folks off the street with a roof over their heads and wraparound services that they need? What is your vision for reimagining the allocation of money meant for mental health? Who wants to take this one? Bob?
Fine. Yeah, I mean, one of my closest advisors who I talked to this week is Daryl Steinberg, the author, is one of my best friends in life. Right. And I was with him in helping create this. And I was in the legislature when we changed the law, because part of the challenge is we were challenged in court and we could not use this money for housing. We couldn't bond around it. So we created $2 billion of bonding money to help pay for housing, right? And I talked to him about what changes were being made. And I talked to some of the supervisors who were there, again, who are status quo people who are sitting on $1 billion. And by the way, the reason I say $2 billion is because right when this thing started out, it was 730 million. Now it's going to be 3.8 billion, $1 billion to us. Plus we put another $1 billion for mental health in for community college to train people. So the number's huge. And there are other counties that are using this dollars. When I went and talked to people in the mental health department and said, why aren't you using it? Well, we don't think it's long-term enough. We think it's restrictive. I'm sorry, forget about it. So this means funding all the teams that we've got to do for 988, all the training that we have to do. Every dollar's got to be on the street. It also means putting up money for services and for housing, all of which can be done. And if there's any requirements that need to be done to be able to amend it, in my role, again, if people want to argue and say, oh, you're a state legislator, you don't understand what's on the ground, we can talk about that. But the truth of the matter is the counties are subdivisions of the state. So much of understanding what happens is that relationship and getting things done. I would suggest one of the great challenges that we've faced is that the county's been horrible at that relationship. And there's so many things. So all I'm suggesting is whatever amendments are done, I would push and get permission later on and violate the rules and start spending the cash. All you need is 3 votes to do it. They're not doing it. I don't understand why the status quo is not doing it. It's crazy. And then the other example of what happened in Hollywood with Trista and not spending that money that was authorized in May 2019 is beyond any imagination I can muster.
I think the important part of your question, Cara, is the how. And I think that's what most people are really wanting to hear from somebody who wants to serve in this role. I'm supported and endorsed by Supervisor Janice Hahn, who has a plan to locate mental health urgent cares in communities throughout the county. So that way people aren't having to access mental health care services hours away, out of their daily life, and often creating stigma by being sent further away from their homes, separated from their families and communities in order to get the health care that they need. We need to bring these services into our communities, and not just for our most urgent needs that we have seen on our streets and impacting our homelessness crisis, but also for all of us. We all have been told for an extended period of time that if we got within 6 feet of each other, we might kill each other because of COVID. And that has taken a toll on each of us in ways we know and in ways we're still finding out. We need to take this moment to focus on investment in mental health care resources and destigmatize and make it a regular part of our healthcare, just as we might get a physical every year. Make sure that we're supporting our mental health care as well. We just recently, through July, implemented the 988 system nationally, and LA County is responsible locally for all of our communities. Dee Dee Hirsch is providing that service in partnership with the county, doing that call service center. And my community, we learned that the county was going to have a few dozen teams. I don't think that's nearly enough for the need that we have throughout the county. So we stepped up and we're creating our own behavioral crisis response team in our community to work in partnership with the county to make sure that when calls come into the county from my city, that West Hollywood calls then are routed to these teams, so we have faster response. I know Culver City is looking at doing that as well. We need to work between the county and all of the local cities and neighborhoods to make sure that these services are actually meeting people on the ground, and then work with the federal government to make sure that they are appropriately investing in this system. If we want 988 to work like 911, we have to invest in it.
The county is responsible for protecting hillside communities, controlling development, and managing fires and wildlife corridors. What are your plans in addressing issues that affect hillside communities?
Yes, thank you for the question. I know Councilmember Koretz has been a strong leader in a lot of the LA City policies, and a lot of the concerns that people have had with regard to the fires. We need to make sure that homes are hardened and that there's investment in home hardening in the face of wildfires as well. But we also need to make sure that the policies that have been passed in LA City are not just on paper, but actually put into practice. In my own community, I have done that, whether it's through coordinated construction mitigation plans to make sure hoods are addressed and thoughtfully communicated, so people know how those developers and construction sites will be working together to address impact, and making sure that we're only developing in places that are appropriate. On the natural wildlife side, we need to recreate. You're not on mute. Over the 101 for wildlife to cross. We need to make more crossings. We need to make more refuges for our endangered species. I know that in my own community, we've focused on how we can distribute milkweed to support monarch butterflies. There are so many small scale and large scale projects that can be implemented when we work with the county. Life areas.
Bob?
Thank you so much. Broadly speaking, I served for 20 years on the board of Mulholland Tomorrow that dealt with very many of these issues as a private citizen long before I ever got into government. It's always been a priority of mine. I work with Senator Allen, on a whole host of issues relating to the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and it's important. Even though my role as majority leader is to always work in partnership with my colleagues and never to try to with quietly behind the scenes, but I never felt it was appropriate to step over, and it was the communities that he represented, and our job, particularly in leadership, is to make sure that that happens. Firefighters have endorsed me in this race. The county firefighters, critically important. We've done setback rules, and some of the other things that are happening quietly. The county does, it's pretty cool. They have the Weights and Measures Department, the agricultural commissioner, and basically what they do is they do the brush clearing. You pay money and they do brush clearing. And when I talk to the quiet departments, it doesn't make a lot of noise, but given their success rate, there's 21,000 parcels that they cover, many in these areas that have the impacts that could be extremely important. So I would give them a lot more props and try to give them more resources, because for dollar, they're so impactful. So that's the and obviously we've been very involved in a whole host of these other issues over the years, but I think this kind of covers it in what you can all do in 2 minutes.
That sprinkler use would be banned for 2 weeks, beginning September 6th, partly to make room for emergency repairs to a pipeline that brings in water from the Colorado River. So in the face of the ongoing drought in LA County, and of course all of California, what steps do you propose the county take to reduce water use?
Well, just for me?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So much of what happens in Southern California is imported. Basically, 50% of all water usage goes to the environment, 40% goes to the agricultural community, and only 10% goes to whether it's the business or residential or other things that we deal for human beings. So that's kind of the big picture issue. The Colorado River issue is critically important. I worked on what's called a quantification settlement agreement of the relation Vegas' stuff is going pretty significantly. We've got the drought, the meat is down to 27%. So how do you fix that? What do you do in the near term, given what the real circumstances are? One, Laura Friedman and I spent 2 years working on a conservation measure, what's called conservation as a way of life. As a result of that, the State Water Resources Control important. I introduced a bill one year just to give people diarrhea that said you can't put water in the ocean. Why? Because we're putting 3 million gallons of water that we clean up to federal standards. We have a pipe that goes out 3 miles. Why can't we capture that and recharge the groundwater? It's critically important. I can't tell you how essential that is in terms of sustainability and the like. Stuff. The governor just did something this week. I'm getting some beefs on it, but you have to deal with conservation. But I would suggest it's a much larger thing. And the last thing I would say is that the reason that project's being shut down in Burbank is I'm working on a $552 million budget ask with the LA delegation for Metropolitan Water District that relates to an integrated plan that deals with recycling.
Him to calm down. He's fired up about this issue, I guess. I know that the Los Angeles Metropolitan Water District has been having trouble and some very lively discussions as well, addressing community concerns around the restrictions that they've been putting into place to address this very issue that you're talking about. We need to make sure that we are responsible my opponent didn't.
That's right.
And I think that making sure that the projects of Measure W are realized, and one aspect of Measure W that hasn't been realized that I think is critically important to this question is the education piece and making sure that the community understands the role it has to play in water conservation and water recycling. My opponent is at those other levels of government. And so it's actually implementation that matters to this question and what people are counting on the county to deliver. That's why the county's sustainability plan, our plan as it's called for the county, needs to be fully funded and realized. We need to make sure that development standards are implemented that address sustainable building practices and that the buildings that we are creating are to learn those lessons, implement them here at the local level through these policies through the county.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it's 12 o'clock. We'll go over 4 minutes for your closing statements, and then you can get back to your business at hand, whatever it is, both of you. Closing statement.
Thank you so much. I think, look, we have a choice here. We have door A or door B. We have two candidates, two people that we're trying to make a choice of in the county. One, in my judgment, deals with the status quo. My view is that it's exactly what my opponent said. It is about implementation. That is on local control. Well, you're not getting anything done. That's why I'm trying to come and use the benefits of the experience and skills that I have. And the one thing I think is important when we look at the relative experience here and ability to get things done, I had to deal with every single aspect of everything in the state. My opponent it works in a city. It's 1.9 square miles of a city that's 47 purpose behind the county is not to say, I took care of my little piece of the cheese, but how do you integrate a plan so all of us, all 88 cities and the broader area work together? Those are dynamically different skills. The idea of this board that she's on, I looked it up. Do you know that those settlements, it only according to their website, right? So all I'm suggesting is that these most notions about and you know, my challenge is I don't do all the press stuff. I don't go to all this stuff and I do the quiet stuff. Ask Ben Allen in terms of our work. Go ask Richard Bloom in terms of how we worked on, both of whom are supporting me. And unexciting work. I'm not running for another office. I'm not giving you a platitude. This is who I am. I am comfortable with who I am. I feel comfortable. I've taken 20-some thousand votes. And all I can tell you is I'm serious. This is a really serious endeavor for me. I'm doing it for all the right reasons. And I can't tell you how much it would mean to me to have your support. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time on this Saturday morning.
And I thank you for that opportunity. I agree. You have a very stark contrast here in terms of what is being offered for our future in LA County. And I think it's really the future that we're focusing on. How do we create change? And I don't think that we're going to get change from what we've done for the past 30 years at the state level. I think we're going to get change that money allocation alone does not deliver the resources and services that we need. And as it relates to the affordability critique my opponent made, the reason my community has not been able to has struggled with affordability is because of the state taking away our local control with Costa Hawkins and not allowing us to keep rents more ability have started to come into play. What we need are people who are working at the local level, who are working in coalition. And that's why I have been endorsed by so many Democratic clubs in the Democratic Party. Progressive leaders, for all 4 Democratic supervisors on the board stand with me. And I also want to make sure that that the coalition that we're building we're not just about winning a campaign. With this decision making and implementation on the ground, actually delivering resources, services, and support for people at the local level and getting things done. I want to make sure that we are creating change and a brighter future and making sure that LA County delivers for us at the local level in the ways our communities need. And I'm looking forward to doing that with you, working together. And I hope that you will support me in this race. Thank you very, very much.
The CD11 forum, and balloting closes at 1, and we'll be announcing. Someone will get to you, I'm sure, tell you what's going on. I wish you both great luck, huge luck. I don't know what to say, but
thank you so much. Thanks everybody for taking the time and volunteering. It's really
here we are. I think maybe we'll take a couple minutes break before we get on to CD the 11 forum. I want, because Rad's going to put the questionnaires, in case y'all haven't had time to read them, even though I put them in all of our e-letters, the e-letters I we'll take maybe 2-3 minutes just to go, I'm gonna get a cup of coffee. And maybe take a look at the questionnaires. And also, if any of you, I don't know if all of you read my last email, the one went out this morning, because I keep sending them out to remind everyone to come. But we have a special guest here today that will be Wave, I think his name is. And yeah, so he's running against him, and he was one of our top two. He was our top vote getter in the earlier sheriff's forum that we had. And Villanueva did not show up. So actually, Chief Luna should have our endorsement, but to make it legal, he's on our the candidate, I don't see it in the chat. Yes, here's Tracy's questionnaire and Aaron. So see y'all in a minute. My little glam photo here. Are we ready to get on with our next forum? I see Aaron and Tracy. I changed your name from Ingrid to Tracy. So our timing this time will be done by Rad. Rad, do you want to explain your
Right.
no?
Sorry, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and then stop.
Okay.
I
you can
will
make it-
change
make it
my
darker.
lighting to make it a little.
Okay. So very, very happy to welcome both Tracy and Aaron. Oh gosh, because you know, gosh, I think over half our club practically is in CD 11. I wish you all the luck, both of you all the luck. You've been great. We heard you on our last forum, and we welcome you. So ladies first, Tracy, would you like
One
to
moment,
open?
let me spotlight everyone.
Yeah, with your 2-minute opening.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making the time to have us here on this Saturday. of you that I haven't had an opportunity to meet, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and my background. I was born here in Los Angeles. I'm a third generation Angelino. My father worked for GTE climbing telephone poles and was a member of CWA for his entire professional life. My mom was the school secretary and active member of CSCA for 30 a resident of Venice. I am very proud of the broad coalition of support that I have built across CD11. I am very proud to be endorsed by business groups, neighborhood and community groups, as well as former Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, Fiona Ma, Ron Galperin, our local plumbers and pipe fitters, very pleased to be supported by our public safety partners here in Los Angeles and beyond, including our firefighters, paramedics, park rangers, and police. It's absolutely essential with women's rights under assault around this country that we elect a leader who is going to be a strong ally and advocate for their own reproductive choices. I'm not going to wait for state laws to pass, and we do not need a pilot program to ensure that that happens here in Los Angeles. I will.
Yeah, that's
to
ridiculous.
ensure that we do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm back on, John.
Aaron, you're on.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you for taking the time. My name is Aaron Darling. I'm born and raised in Venice in CD11. I'm raising my 3-year-old son in the same neighborhood that I grew up in. A little bit about myself. My mom taught at Santa Monica College and then UCLA. She was the president of her UC AFT union. I went to Berkeley undergrad. And I graduated in 2008, and I'm proud to have made that choice. I returned back to Los Angeles, lived in Venice, and began representing low-income tenants facing eviction while working at a nonprofit called Eviction Defense Network. I've also worked at public counsel, focusing on a few class action lawsuits, including representing the United Farm Workers, and also big class action against the County of Los Angeles for kicking people off of general relief without due process. And that case settled for millions of dollars. And we changed and modernized the process in which people got notice. And I bring that up because I, as a civil rights lawyer, bring the tangible benefit of holding bureaucracies accountable. And when we're facing a homelessness crisis and a housing crisis, that's what we need, is to hold bureaucracies accountable to tangibly improve outcomes. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the LA County Democratic Party, Stonewall, West LA Young Democrats, Black Los Angeles Young Democrats, Ben Allen, Sheila Kuehl, Isaac Bryan, Laura Friedman, Tina McKinner, the Sierra Club, SCIU 721, Carpenters, the healthcare workers, EAA, Local 11 Unite Here. It's a range of Democrats, elected officials who represent the West Side and unions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so here we go. Obviously, homelessness is the #1 issue in Los Angeles, really the #1 issue. And in Venice, it is huge. What are your priorities for addressing our current homeless crisis and preventing more people from becoming homeless? And what have you done, if anything, historically to combat homelessness? Aaron, why don't you start on this?
Sure. So 5 big things I want to focus on. First, we have to prevent people from entering homelessness, because at this point, people are entering at a faster clip than they're exiting it. So we need to strengthen renter protections and give people a right to counsel who are facing eviction, because as of now, people go in and it's like, if you have a criminal case, you have a public defender, but if you're facing eviction, you don't have a lawyer, and people get bullied out of their homes and oftentimes end up on the streets. Point number one. Point number two, we need to give targeted economic assistance to people who have recently fallen into homelessness to rapidly rehouse people, because the longer people are out in the streets, the worse their lives become. So we could help with, say, security deposit, first month rent, because the barrier to rehousing is so high right now. Third, we need to address the mental health crisis by having a rapid response system that gives trained clinicians a chance to respond to 911 rather than diverting police officers. And that's huge, because mental health places a huge burden on the community. Fourth, we need to get a pipeline out of encampments and into homes. And that means being really aggressive in changing, converting motels, converting adaptive reuse of commercial space, modular housing, such as tiny homes. There's no one silver bullet, but at the end of the day, we need to get beds and units available so that people have a place to go. My opponent, if burst on the scene opposing such a plan on the Ramada Inn on Lincoln. And this is actually what we need to scale up, is converting motels so that we can get people off the streets. And then fifth, I support the United to House LA ballot initiative, which would be a tax on commercial transactions over $5 million. It would raise over $800 million overall for permanent supportive housing. Because at the end of the day, what LA hasn't done is create permanent supportive housing. But we can't sit on our hands for that to happen. We have to act immediately to creating a space for people to go, and while addressing the basic needs on the streets. We need to house people, not warehouse people. And to end, I've spent years as a housing lawyer keeping people in their homes, and that's the experience I bring to bear in this race.
Thanks. Tracy.
Sure. Yeah. So this is the existential crisis of our time. And I am mindful that if there are 50,000 people sleeping on the streets in our city and county, there are 50,000 human stories and reasons why those folks are where they are. My complete plan can be found at tracypark.com. I'm just going to address a few of the highlights. It's absolutely essential that we do everything we can to keep people housed. We all know that it is far more cost effective and efficient to keep people housed than it is to try to get them off the streets, in some cases, many years later. Among other things, I am proposing that we have a 24-hour emergency housing hotline so that folks are connected in real time to real people to help them get the resources that they need in order to stay in their homes. Too many Angelenos are living one paycheck away from financial disaster. Unexpected medical bills or unexpected job loss can be triggers into homelessness. It's also important that we are being mindful about who is in the population that we are attempting to serve. And I believe that we need to be much more granular in designing interventions that are specific to individual needs, whether that is youth aging out of foster care, seniors 55 and up, women who are victims of domestic violence, veterans, and other demographic populations. And I want to briefly respond to the misstatement that my opponent has made with respect to the Ramada. When that project was proposed in the community, there was no outreach or engagement. And I spent months in weekly meetings with the council office attempting to set that program up for success by making proposals and suggestions about designing it in a way that not only would be respectful to the community, but that would ensure the results that we are investing and expect to see and would like to see, so that we can actually have this problem addressed in a way that works. Thanks.
Thank you.
Tracy, next question. What is your plan for providing housing for the unhoused community in your district? Do you have what it takes to withstand the cacophony of criticism from both the left and the right, to cut through all the noise on both sides? It's about creating more units. Do you have a concrete plan?
Yes, thank you for that, Ingrid. So you're right when you mentioned the cacophony from both sides on the issues. This, unfortunately, is an issue that has been complicated in many ways by our current council members' failure to keep promises and commitments that were made to the community. I think it's imperative that we begin by keeping the promises that were made so that we can rebuild the community trust and engagement that was broken. I also think that it is important that every community recognize that we're going to have to be part of the solutions. We're still waiting for the 2022 point in time count so that we can understand the numbers of individuals on our streets, as well as the LA Alliance settlement, which is now pending on appeal in the Ninth Circuit. Both of those are important pieces of data that will give us a better sense of what we need to do and where we need to do it. There are opportunities all over the West Side to bring housing and shelter solutions to table. I am not going to wait until there is permanent brick and mortar housing available to begin this process. We cannot let perfection get in the way of good enough. We are going to have to invest in some emergency and interim solutions that give people an opportunity to go somewhere where they're safe and able to get connected to the services that they need to have. Of course, the long-term build out of affordable and permanent supportive housing remain important goals, but there is absolutely nothing progressive or humane about allowing people to continue sleeping in piles of garbage and rats on the side of the road and in our public spaces. We are going to have to come together as a community to make those investments in the immediate short-term solutions that we need to get people help today.
Aaron.
So the question is about more units. And this is a huge problem in the city of LA because we prioritize market rate development and not affordable housing. So much so that the state has ordered the city to zone for 260,000 units by October. And this is how far behind schedule we are doing. So that's why I'm a big proponent of the United to House LA ballot initiative. I don't even know my opponent's position on that. I'm also a big proponent of easing basically increasing the speed of which we can create affordable housing. In particular, that means nonprofit affordable housing providers should have buy right so that we can cut the time, because holding costs are a huge problem in getting new housing online. I've been supported by Abundant Housing LA, as well as Carpenters and other entities that realize the problem that we have in that we don't have enough units in LA. And we have to be smart about converting publicly owned land, city-owned land, especially, and also adaptive reuse. But that 5 to 10 year process of creating units, it's important that we don't sit on our hands and create other opportunities. And so I think let's just get down to brass tacks. What are the proposals? I support the Venice Housing Corporation's plan for housing on a publicly owned lot on the Venice median. My opponent opposes that. I support converting motels. I don't know of a single motel that she supports. It's quite the contrast. And so at the end of the day, as someone who has experience as a housing lawyer, it is about working with the housing providers, nonprofits, for-profits, and making it easier to build. But in doing that, we need to focus on transit-oriented development. We can't be building in fire zones in the Santa Monica Mountains, but we can be building closer to mass transit, the extended metro line, bus lines, because especially young people, they want to live in transit-oriented places with density. We cannot just say, oh, we're going to build all affordable housing in South LA. The city has to do a fair share everywhere. Thank you. There's a lot to talk about. This is an important topic.
Yeah, that really is the key issue, I think, all over our city here. All right, more housing here. Will you support inclusionary zoning in the city of Los Angeles? And that's where a percentage of new units required to be affordable. And if so, what percentage should be affordable and what level of affordability would you support? Aaron, continue.
Yeah, I mean, we have a tremendous opportunity with the community plan being amended to increase the level from 15%, which is just way too low. And then we also need to deepen the affordability. So for instance, another housing project that I support West LA Commons has almost 50% affordability and deep affordability, meaning someone who's making under $40,000 a year, say a busboy working in a local restaurant industry should be able to afford housing. And so that's like something I support. I can't say there's a magic number, whether it's 30% or 50%. Like I'd want to talk to more planning experts, but I would say at the very least 100%, at least double, because the 15% is just not getting us there. And I also want to talk about not just inclusionary zoning, but creating more RSO units. I don't even know if my opponent is supportive of rent control. She's been given hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Apartment Owners Association. I mean, is she even supportive of rent control? I want to expand it. I want to make sure that we could repeal Costa-Hawkins so that we can, other cities, because let's keep in mind, this is a regional problem. Other cities don't have rent control. It's easier to kick people out. And then that regional problem oftentimes rears its head in the city of Los Angeles. So I'm for statewide repealing Costa-Hawkins, making it expand rent control, also Ellis Act reform so that people we're not losing units that way, and then expanding inclusionary zoning throughout the West Side, obviously through the city, but on the West Side is much more doable. And there's also workforce housing. There's also transit-oriented development. There's TCAC. There's so many funding streams, affordable housing, and quite frankly, Rosendahl, Bonin, they failed to do that. I mean, the West Side does not have enough affordable housing. And that's really a huge motivator to me. It's at the end of the day, it's creating a net gain in affordability and deeper affordability on the West Side, because I grew up in an economically and racially diverse community, and most of the kids I grew up with are gone.
Tracy.
Sure. So we absolutely are facing a very real affordability crisis in our city. And it is important that we center our policy making around bringing opportunities for Angelenos to live and thrive in the communities all over the West Side, particularly the communities where folks are already working. I am a huge proponent of affordable housing, and in my office, we will personally escort good, affordable housing projects to the front of the line. I am a big fan of the all affordable developments, and I would like to see more of those brought to market. The reality is that for those developers, they have to get through multiple funding sources, securing the first piece of funding as collateral for the second and third, and that process can take years. Also, the bureaucratic barriers that we have put in the way of moving these projects forward at City Hall is unacceptable to me. In my council office, we will have an entire staff dedicated to getting these projects online. As I said, I would like to see creation of more all affordable housing projects. I certainly want to see in any mixed project, the number of affordable units increased. I do have concerns about 80% AMI being the usual benchmark for what constitutes affordable. What we need are low and very low income units so that folks who are working in our communities can actually afford to live here. It is also important to me that these projects come with a pathway to ownership. And as we are trying to meet the goals in our plan to house LA, we need to think about the demographics of who we're building for. They can't all be single bedrooms or executive studios. What we need are units that are suitable for families, for seniors, and other populations as well.
Thank you. Next question, and that's for you, Tracy. LA has set ambitious Green New Deal goals and targets. What do you think are the primary barriers to achieving them, and what will you do to overcome these barriers?
So yeah, the Green New Deal for LA is one of the most ambitious plans we have to become a sustainable city, and doing everything that we can to achieve those goals is imperative. We have an opportunity currently, really a once in a generation opportunity to access federal funding to help us meet a number of those initiatives. While the city has made progress on some of these issues, there is a lot more work to be done. whether that is investing in our public transit infrastructure. And I'm very excited about the opportunities that we have to do that here on the west side, expanding our EV fleet citywide and making the investments in the infrastructure that we're going to need to support that. All of those are laudable goals. The issue is going to, of course, be continuing to receive the funding and ensuring that we have adequate staff working on the grants available to implement these projects. One of the things that I'm going to do as a council member is have a grant writer on my staff. In 2008, after the recession, and currently now in some city departments, there is inadequate staff to actually apply for and bring the funding necessary to the table to have the projects shovel ready and able to be implemented. So those are things that I am personally going to supplement the city with by offering those opportunities. When it comes to achieving our Green New Deal goals, it is also important that we are being mindful of potential economic impacts in some of our underserved communities around Los Angeles and ensure that they are being provided with the same opportunities and access to the resources that we want to see brought to market. So whether that is subsidizing residential solar, ensuring that we are making EV and other investments in those communities, we have to democratize this process for everyone.
Aaron?
I just want to note before I go into this important question that my opponent did not respond when I said, does she support rent control? Like, it's just a simple question. Do you support rent control?
Aaron, I do support rent control. So now you have your answer.
Okay. And then the other issue is Section 8, because that has to be expanded.
Yes, I support that too, Aaron. Now you know.
So, good. I'm glad it's on the record.
Great.
And so the Green New Deal is why, the big picture, pushing LA to 100% renewable energy is a huge motivation for me to run. We have to do it in the face of federal inaction. And that is why I've been supported and endorsed by the Sierra Club, Sunrise Movement, Youth Climate Strike. I think young people especially realize that we are in a climate crisis and that we have to act. And it's terrible that the Supreme Court has handcuffed the federal government. And that makes it all the more important that local government needs to act, especially when the local government owns its utility. We have to push DWP to get to 100% renewable energy. We have to have industrial scale solar energy. This is like super exciting, but it's talk about existential. We have to push that. And we also have to recognize that this is a tremendous economic opportunity. We should not lose a single good union job. There's a tremendous opportunity to create good green collar jobs in electrification as we phase out gas, as we electrify everything from kitchens to just the grid. And then we also have to have, like I say, utility scale solar, rooftop solar programs, and let's address a lot of common issues locally. We have a SoCal gas storage facility that needs to be phased out. That's a potential Aliso Canyon disaster. We also have increased wildfires in the Santa Monica Mountains. We can't have increased development in a fire zone. At the end of the day, climate change rears its ugly head locally all the time. And so we have to basically address with climate mitigation kind of site by site. But at the end of the day, the big picture is pushing LADWP to 100% renewable energy. And I haven't heard that from my opponent, but I also, it's the details are in how we do that. We can't just say, oh, we can do it by 2035, but it's a daily thing in pushing for this, quite frankly, generational change.
Okay, thanks. Aaron, continue. How can we get better results from Vision Zero, Mayor Garcetti's plan to eliminate traffic fatalities? Things have gotten worse since Vision Zero was passed. Do we need more cops patrolling speeders, road diets? What is your vision?
Yeah, this is huge. Big picture, LA has a mobility plan. It was a lot of resources spent on creating a mobility plan, and only 7% have been implemented. So I do not think it's about reinventing the wheel. It's about implementing LA's own mobility plan. I'm proud to have been endorsed by Streets for All because there's a larger vision, which is we need to create the infrastructure so that people are less reliant on their automobiles. Of course, people will always drive. It's LA. No one's going to take away anyone's car, but we have to create a system so that people are less reliant on solely automobiles. What does that look like? That's interconnected, protected bicycle lanes. That's oftentimes bus-only lanes. It's oftentimes first mile, last mile, so that people can connect to the metro system. It's intra-west side travel. And it's also, let's acknowledge that there's a huge lawsuit against the city of LA for inadequate sidewalks. People trip and fall all the time. But as it relates to traffic fatalities, let's be real, the city of LA has taken a step backwards. And in fact, along Culver, the city scaled back its bicycle protection plan. And I believe, just big picture, it's if we build it, they will come. And especially in the face of e-bikes, more and more people are going to be taking electric bikes just to do basic chores, not just a Sunday stroll, but to do their grocery shopping. And so I believe it's about having these interconnected bicycle lanes that are protected and that basically people flock to, so that we have a density along bicycle corridors so that more people can do their intra-west side travel. Because we all know that the vast majority of driving is within 2 miles of your house. And that's silly. I think a lot of people, if given a real alternative, will provide it. And so in short, it's about taking the mobility plan and pushing it forward. But in the process of doing that, we have to listen to neighbors. Design implementation is crucial that we take the lead from neighborhoods and neighborhood councils. So thank you.
Thank you. Tracy.
Sure. So yeah, it is certainly concerning to me, the significant number and increase in serious accidents and fatalities in the years following implementation of Vision Zero. There are a lot of elements to the plan that have not been adequately implemented. And the components of it that I would like to see scaled up are the high visibility crosswalk upgrades, the speed feedback signs, the crosswalk paddle signs, the hybrid beacons, the scramble crosswalks. There are a number of elements to it that could be done better. We have seen some negative impacts from some of the flawed design issues, including the ability of emergency vehicles in some cases to be able to get through, whether that's the bulb outs or certain traffic slowing measures. So I think that there is a real opportunity and obligation, frankly, of local government to do a much better job with some of the design elements to ensure that these plans and approaches are being done in a responsible and safe way. I bought my first electric bike in 2017, and it's one of my pieces of transportation. I rely on it heavily for travel around in my community. But unfortunately, there are places that I can't go. I certainly wouldn't ride it on Lincoln. And there are huge opportunities with Lincoln Fast Forward to implement some safer, smarter designs. But I don't think that bikes sharing lanes with buses is the way to get there. I am also sensitive to concerns that have been raised in our communities about bad designs related to some of the road diets, whether that's detrimental impact on the local business community, cut through traffic, speeding in residential neighborhoods, and other collateral impacts. So as we roll out these new designs and plans, I will be heavily engaged with the communities and stakeholders to make smart decisions on how to do this.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm sorry. Thank you, Tracy. The next question is as follows. Sorry. Our West LA Democratic Club, along with the LA County Democratic Party, after extensive research, have taken positions to oppose the proposed project being touted. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There's multiple fire engines going crazy. And anyway, okay, I'm going to start again. Sorry. Our West LA Democratic Club, along with the LA County Democratic Party, after extensive research, have taken positions to oppose the proposed project being touted as a restoration for the Ballona wetlands. Do you agree with this position? And if not, why not? If you do agree, what will you do to stop the flow of money and persuade the state to withdraw the proposed project? More than 15 million in bond money and even more from the federal government has already been spent just to plan this project so far. Again, that's for Tracy.
And it's Bayona.
Ballona.
I wrote it for you.
Yeah, so I
Bayona.
am well aware of how controversial this topic is, and I understand that there are multiple different views on this issue. I certainly hear and share the concerns about the collateral impacts that the restoration project may have on existing wildlife and habitat in the Ballona wetlands. I share many of the concerns about the EIR process and it being used as a potential for expansion of the gas pipelines and storage area in that particular location. As many of you probably already know, a lawsuit has been filed challenging the project. And so in some ways, it's really going to be up to the court at this point to make some decisions about what is going to happen next. I am following along with the lawsuit to see what happens there. What I will say is that if for some reason, and I don't know what the court is ultimately going to do with this, but if it goes forward, it would be absolutely imperative there. So unfortunately, at this point, because of the lawsuit, it's really hard to be able to say what the ultimate outcome on it is going to be. So I will conclude by saying I hear the concerns, they are valid, and I share a lot of those concerns.
Of Ballona in the mid-90s. I remember interviewing Ruth Galantner for my school paper about this issue. This is not a new issue. And, you know, I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club, you know, for a reason. I think there's some serious problems, especially let's keep in mind that SoCal Gas is funding some of this, and the bulldozing of tons and tons of dirt would be a disaster. I will say, look, I'm not a scientist, so you know there's certain stuff where you know I will defer to scientists. True that there's also, you know, the Coastal Commission has to decide. But at the end of the day, I think there's tremendous community opposition for a reason. And yes, we need to be, you know, following the science, but let's also, you know, acknowledge that there is an ecosystem and that it would be massively disruptive to bulldoze tons of, I don't even know the number here, but I
Thank you. Just to let everyone know, the ballots have been sent out, but I extended the voting because I think we're going to probably be here until almost 1, and I want everybody to hear all of the questions before making their decision. So I've extended it 15 minutes. We'll still have Chief Luna speaking with us. is spending more money on LAPD than ever before, yet crime is on the news daily. Murders, smash and grabs, et cetera, et cetera. As we head into another budget season, should the city be giving more money and resources to the LAPD or be focusing on different ways to address crime?
So yeah, let's first off focus on violent crime, which is what more officers on the beat and on the patrol to reduce response times, because the response times are far too low. And so we can hire unionized clerical jobs and get more officers out from behind desks and on patrol. The other thing, and this is a huge problem in Venice, but throughout the West Side, is that we're basically diverting police officers' time dealing with the mental health crisis. I see it in Venice on a weekly basis. There'll be 4 officers talking to one person who's on the verge of bicycle theft, which is rampant. It is obscene that we see, say, 6 obviously stolen bicycles near a tent, to increase smash and grabs and assaults. So that is huge. But there is certain stuff that doesn't make sense, like, say, militarized gear. LA voted yesterday, and like that does not make any sense to me. Oftentimes in Venice, it's a great example of this, is officers on bicycles, officers talking to people. We need that. We don't need people with, going into, combat. But yeah, at the end of the day, we need to free up officers to address things by addressing the mental health concerns, and acknowledging that there's a giant funnel, and all of society's problems can't be through 911 that lead
is one of the primary obligations that local government has. And ensuring that we have effective partnerships with public safety is one of the driving issues of this campaign and other campaigns around the city. I am not in the camp of defunding or abolishing our police. I think that there is a lot of room in the conversation for discussion about making commitments to constitutionally based best practices. And there's no dispute that that's what the vast majority of us want and expect to see from our public safety partners. However, there are investments that we need to continue making in public safety, whether that is augmenting them with mental health and social workers to handle some of the calls, to reduce call time responses and take the burden off them, or whether it's investing in other types of policing programs that actually help us get the results that we'd like to see in our communities. So, for example, investing in community policing and gang prevention. Those are 2 essential functions that our public safety partners provide to us on the crime reduction and prevention side. We also need to invest more in our mental evaluation unit. This is an organization that partners with clinicians from the Department of Mental Health to handle some of the most challenging cases in the West Side and across the city. I'd also like to see our SLO program expanded, and I would like to see the return of our sexual assault and human trafficking task force and our HOPE team, our homeless and proactive engagement outreach team, that was disbanded when LAPD lost $150 million from its budget in 2020. We also have only about 25% staffing for our park rangers, another investment that I will be making.
Thank you, Tracy. The next question starts with you. What ideas would you propose to increase municipal revenue? What about specific fees and taxes for car share companies like Uber or Lyft, and for companies providing scooters?
Yeah. So, this is an interesting time in our city's economic and budget cycle. Obviously the pandemic over the last couple of years has created a lot of challenges for our city in terms of its funding, but the challenges have also been experienced by many folks in the community, whether that is our business community, our tourism industry, which is a huge source of revenue for the city, coming here from the west side and other parts of the city, Hollywood and downtown as well. Many people, of course, were detrimentally impacted economically during the pandemic. And so when we are talking about potential taxes and fees in order to increase revenue to the city, I would just be very mindful about how that burden could potentially impact our economic recovery as we emerge from the pandemic. There certainly are places and opportunities for revenue generation. And you mentioned a couple with rideshare and the scooter companies. Those may be appropriate sources of new revenue. But I think a better way potentially to approach this issue is to help our business community get back on its feet. I have spent over a year now meeting with local businesses, hosting roundtables to understand their challenges. I'm not sending emails looking for local businesses that I can promote myself with on social media. I actually care about this community and making sure that they can thrive and get their business levels back and restore those taxes and revenue that our city depends on is going to be absolutely essential to ensuring that the city has the revenue that it needs to help get out of the pandemic deficit and to keep continuing the general municipal services that we all need and want.
Aaron.
Yeah, I didn't hear any specifics, but I did hear skepticism of taxes. And I think it's important to note that there's only one person in this race who's a former Republican. And I—
Aaron, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
No, it's my turn.
You were a member of another party for a number of
LA,
years, and I have been a Democrat for over 20 years.
It's my turn. It's Tracy. It's my turn. Tracy, it's my turn. It's my turn. It's my turn. I get the minute to speak. I support the United to House LA ballot initiative, which would be a tax on commercial transactions over $5 million, and it would raise $800 million a year to create permanent supportive housing and homelessness services. This is an example of progressive taxation that Democrats should embrace and historically have always embraced, because that's what we need is basically, in the face of massive inequality and tens of thousands of people who are on the streets, this is something that can move the needle while not hurting people who are dealing with transactions of more than $5 million. So that's very specific, and I'm on the record. And since I entered this race in February, I've been a proponent of the United to House LA ballot initiative. And I really want everyone on this call to get behind it. Outside of my little race, this is huge for LA. And I think as Democrats, we should get behind this. And I've been on the campaign trail for months. I still don't know my opponent's position on this. And then there's the question about rideshare and also just generally gig economy. And I think it is, I think this has to be on the table. I know in Venice, bird scooters are tremendously popular, but they also bear a tremendous burden on our sidewalks. They block sidewalks, they oftentimes traffic accidents. And I think some of the vast revenue that's going to these companies should be going to local governments that have to bear the infrastructure cost of this. And I think that's completely fair. And I also have to say that when we talk about taxation, it's important that we're not talking about regressive taxation amongst the most vulnerable through fees. I mean, that's what states in the South do. We need to focus not hurting anyone, but on progressive taxation. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to give Tracy 5 seconds to rebut this, because she really was upset with this accusation. So
yeah, this is a repeated false narrative coming out of the other campaign, and I want to address it head on. I have been a registered Democrat for 20 years. I am very proud to be endorsed by Blue Revolution. In 2020, I helped Blue Revolution raise $250,000 for the Biden-Harris campaign. And to be clear, my opponent has not always been a Democrat either. He was a registered member of the Green Party from 1998 to 2004. And that is directly attributable to why Al Gore lost the election. I have proudly supported Democratic candidates and causes for many, many years. I was a registered Republican for 1 year, 20 years ago.
Okay. Aaron, take 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's not true that my opponent has been a Republican for just 1 year. She was a Republican for many years. And when I was in college at Berkeley, I was a Green Party. Let's keep in mind, Democrats, excuse me, in the state of California, a vote, I remember this because it was my first time voting, a vote for Nader in 2000 was not a vote against Gore in California. And that was a specific issue. But in my adult life, since graduating college, I have been a Democrat. And that's why I've been supported and been endorsed by the LA County Democratic Party, the Young Democrats, Stonewall, Culver City Democrats, Black Los Angeles Young Democrats, West LA Young Democrats.
Okay, we get it.
I'm a Democrat.
Okay, let's move on to the last question. I hope you guys cleared that up. Okay, last question. Interesting question. How should CD11 prepare for the 2028 Olympics? A 17-day extravaganza that should yield millions in added revenue. As an aside, I created, and I was on the cover of the New York Times, I created the scarf, the official Olympic scarf for the 1984 Olympics. That was very cool. Anyway, what kind of capital improvement plan would you support and why for the Olympics? Whose turn is this? Aaron.
Sure, yeah. It's not just 2028, it's also 2026 World Cup. And this is a huge opportunity. CD11, of course, has LAX. And so we have to support the infrastructure, the automatic people mover, the expansion of the Crenshaw and the Expo line. And we just got to basically, I'm so proud to be from LA. Whenever I travel, I say, I'm so proud to be from LA. And so I really want to show off LA. And that's creating the infrastructure because we know that the whole world's eyes are going to be on us. And so it is, of course, on these infrastructure that we have to support, especially as it relates to mass transit, getting people around. But it is also about housing. We cannot be having tens of thousands of people on the streets in 2028, and then a month before the Olympics, we're just sweeping people off because we want to put a pretty face on it. That's what China did. That's what authoritarian regimes did. If anything, we have the clock is ticking. Now is the time to address the homelessness and affordable housing crisis so that we can show off the city. And that's why I believe the homelessness crisis is at the end of the day, there's a stark contrast. Are you going to hire someone with a housing lawyer experience or not? And so I think it's all these infrastructure projects, but the end point is it's also a housing issue.
And don't we all love what came out of the 84 Olympics at the airport?
I will end on that if I have a little bit of time. Actually, my dad worked for the 1984 Olympics, and I still have like 1984 Olympic swag, in here. So yeah, let's show off LA again.
Tracy.
So my dad also worked on the 1984 Olympics. He installed the communication systems at the Olympic Village in downtown Los Angeles. It was his proudest job that he ever worked on. And I have very, very fond memories of attending a number of those Olympic events with my dad, who I really miss. I have inherited his Olympic pin and Sam the Eagle collection. Those are actually in a drawer across the room. So I'm excited to get those out and bring those back into the forefront of my life. I'm actually going to seek an appointment to the Olympic Committee. I think that this is a huge opportunity, not just for our city, but for the West Side. Obviously, with LAX being the entry point to our beautiful city and the West Side, our investments there are absolutely essential. And that is in terms of all of the upgrades and the greening of LAX that is so essential, as well as building out the transit that is going to be so important. I also think that it's important as we're preparing for this maybe second in a generation opportunity to host this fantastic event in our city, that we are thinking about the amenities and the resources that make our city so special. And that is protecting and preserving our coastline, our beautiful Santa Monica Mountains and recreational resources, the incredible institutions that we have here in the city. And just to call a couple of out on the west side, the Skirball Cultural Center, the Getty Center, and other places like that. Our businesses and our hotels, of course, are going to be an important component of this to ensure that we have the places and the resources for the expected inflow of visitors to be able to visit safely. And that means ensuring that we are all working together through the economic recovery to ensure that we have all of those layers of infrastructure and services and opportunities, both recreational and otherwise. So I'm super excited about this.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited too. It's going to be wonderful. With that, Tracy, go out to your final 2 minutes.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the robust discussion and the opportunity to be here with you today. You know, this is an historic election in CD11, and we are genuinely presented with an opportunity to either continue on the same path that has led to many of the circumstances that we face across our district and our city, or voting for some change, different approaches, innovative solutions, someone who is going to act with the urgency that is necessary to address these issues, who is going to restore trust with the public, someone who is willing to roll up their sleeves, who will show up regularly to do the work that's being asked of them. I welcome that opportunity. I welcome the change. I welcome the opportunity to partner and to collaborate with you when I take office next year. The things that we have ahead of us are difficult. The cost of living skyrocketing, gas at $6 a gallon, and a recession looming means that we are all going to have to row in the same direction. That's business, that's labor, that's our environmental groups. And in some cases, it may mean setting aside some of the politics that have gotten in the way of our ability to actually work together to solve these problems. I am a leader that is going to unite people, not divide them. I'm going to cross-collaborate across the entire West Side and with my colleagues on the council across the city to ensure that we are making smart decisions that actually lead us through these issues and ensure that Los Angeles is a safe, thriving, sustainable, modern city that everyone can afford to live and invest in. So I would welcome your support. I appreciate your partnership and your collaboration. Thank you again for having us here today.
Okay. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you everyone, fellow Democrats, for being here. This has been great. Yeah, I support Karen Bass. I'm not sure my opponent's position on that. I have never been a Republican. I do not support recalls. And I am familiar in the Venice community before 2020 recall. I served on the Venice Neighborhood Council. I was on the LA County Beach Commission, but these are just, little volunteer opportunities. The big thing is I was a part of my community representing tenants facing eviction. There are people I know to this day who are in Venice in their apartments because I fought and won their court case and they're still in their homes. I'm really proud to be born and raised in Venice and be raising my son here. He's 3 years old and I want him to grow up in a community that he could be proud of. And for me, yeah, there's so many things in the status quo that aren't working. And that is really the homelessness crisis and the affordable housing crisis and climate change. And this is what has driven me. And look, I entered the race last. There was 8 candidates. I was only 6 out of 8 candidates in fundraising, but yet I was first in votes. That is real grassroots support. I did not have hundreds of thousands of dollars in IEs, basically bombing everyone's, not excuse me, but bombastic language in your mailbox. It's about talking to neighbors and having a grassroots support. And that's why I would love your support because I just think it's so important that Democrats kind of keep the momentum, that Karen Bass gets elected, and that we have, progressives in City Hall, and someone who's rooted in this community through his whole life. And yeah, I'm just super excited for this opportunity because I'm proud of my legal career. You could ask me any year, I've been a lawyer since 2008, what I've been doing, and I'm very proud of it. But at the end of the day, it's a drop in the bucket compared to representing almost 300,000 people. And that's what motivates me, to move the needle by representing 300,000 people in all these core issues, because right now we're at a fork in the road in the city. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, gosh, thank you, both of you. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend, probably campaigning, doing all your things, but we really appreciate you taking the time and coming to reintroduce yourself to the club. I think probably the majority of the people here had already seen you. There's 40 people on the call now. And as I said, I extended the voting, everyone, till 1:15. So you can now check your ballots. Rad, if you want to post the questionnaires again. Aaron and Tracy, I think, if they want to do a quick look or something. That's it, because now I want to say thank you and introduce Chief Robert Luna, who will speak for a few minutes. And I'm so happy he's here as well. Hi, Robert. That's hi. Hi, so nice to see you. And so, as I said before, I don't know if all of you were here. In our voting process, our primary voting process, okay, Sheriff Villanueva, though he answered our questionnaire and all, he did not show up for the meeting. He didn't give any excuse. He didn't apologize, nothing. So he isn't even on our consideration because he wasn't formally a candidate. However, to make it, and then Robert is the top two against Villanueva. So to make it perfectly legal, we need to affirm Robert as our endorsed candidate, and he will be on your ballot. So with that, let's say hello. And if there are any questions for him in the chat, we've got about 10 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you. And good afternoon to each and every one of you, and a virtual handshake or hug. I'm a hugger. So to each and every one of you. So thank you for having me on. And more importantly, thank each and every one of you for your commitment to spend a beautiful Saturday in front of a screen, listening to all of us. And I was very impressed with the previous two candidates and a lot of their stances on issues. But for me, regarding the sheriff's race, after several years of dysfunction and chaos, allegations of corruption, which includes deputy gangs, I think it's absolutely 100% time for a change. And I represent that change. And just a real quick recap on my experience, my personal experience first, because I think that's very important for you to know. You're looking at a grown adult who dreamt of being a police officer from a very early age. I want to say about 5 or 6. But I grew up in East Los Angeles. My father was a janitor, migrated here from Mexico. My mom sold food on the streets. Although she was born in Modesto, her family was from Michoacan. I witnessed a lot of social injustice or inequity growing up. I could tell you stories for hours. And that really molded what I tell people is my philosophy on relationship-based policing. My journey to policing was not easy. I was that 13-year-old kid riding a bike and getting pulled over by LA County sheriffs and getting thrown on the hood of a police car. So I've been on that other end on many occasions. My professional experience, I spent 36 years of my career or my life serving the residents of Long Beach. Out of those 36 years, I spent 20 of those years in executive management positions. So I have a lot of experience running a police department. 7 of those years, I was actually appointed as the chief of police, where I was very successful. Not only that, but in my resume, which is, we can talk about that later, I have extensive training throughout the country. I have an MPA from the Cal State University of Long Beach, and I have a whole list of other educational achievements I've achieved. Not bad for, I'm the first one in my family to get a high school diploma, actually, and I'm very proud of the education I earned. And then I also served on the executive board for the Major City Chiefs Association as the Western Region representative, which meant I represented the 9 Western states and 20 cities. So I have connections in policing across this country, not only with other police chiefs and sheriffs, but throughout Congress and the White House of getting things done and being very transformative in the process. I have a proven track record of leadership, not only in law enforcement, but just being a community leader. I love community. Again, it goes back to my roots of growing up in East LA. And I have examples of not only reducing crime in Long Beach, but as I was reducing crime, I was also raising police accountability at the same time. And some argue you can't do those two things at the same time. You absolutely can. I've done it and I've been successful at it. My vision for the Sheriff's Department is to create a 21st century Sheriff's Department. That means it's the best in the country. That means that it's forward thinking, that it's open to change, the culture. And that means that we deal with the complexities of crime, homelessness, and custody facilities in a way where we look at best practices, not only across the country, but across the world. Who's doing it the best way? Because at the end of the day, if you look at my history, my work history, I am not about the status quo. I don't like the status quo. I don't make change just to make change, but I don't like mediocrity. And I like to be on the right side of history. And that's what my record shows. I want to create a safer county through collaboration, through rebuilding public trust, driven by data and a philosophy on community partnerships. Because in my world, or the way I view the world in policing is, you are not successful in policing a community unless it's with the full cooperation and in partnership with your community. That's what I bring to the table. That's what I've done. That's what I expect to do as your sheriff. I want to create a culture in the Sheriff's Department, a culture of respect, of optimism, one of doing your job without excuses or pointing the finger at other government agencies or individuals. Let's do our job and do it right. And then if we can prove something else through data, then we'll present it to our community and we'll go a different direction. But it is about partnerships. It's about accountability and doing things better. And then just as I wrap up here, because there's so much information, when I have my vision for the Sheriff's Department, it's going to be done through leadership, because people say it's a tough culture. It is. It's not going to be easy. How are you going to do this? And I say it's going to be through principal leadership. My focus will be on selecting the right leadership, executive leadership team around me. And then it expands there to lower ranks all the way down to every employee that works at the Sheriff's Department. And I want people who have integrity. I want people who prioritize our profession, our oath, and community over themselves or the loyalty to a sheriff. I don't want any employee to be loyal to Robert Luna. The community comes first. The oath we took, the badge we wear. We got to get back to that, ladies and gentlemen, because we've gotten way away from that. And that's that dysfunction and chaos that we see. And then if you know anything about me, please ask government officials, community members in Long Beach what I was like as the chief of police for 7 years. They'll tell you that I'm a person who has an open mind, that listens, that works with their community, fully immersed and engaged. That's why I won 13 different awards while I was the chief of police in Long Beach. And just one other factor, I keep on saying one more thing, I promise. This is the last thing. I'm all excited here. I'm out of breath. Just quickly on endorsements. I'm very humbled to say this. One, I've achieved the endorsement from the LA County Democratic Party, the LA County Federation of Labor. All 5 LA County supervisors have endorsed me and our campaign. And if you know all 5 of them, they're wonderful people, but they want somebody they can work with. And some will argue, well, you're going to go work for them. No, we're going to work with each other for the benefit of our community. I have the support of 5 or 6 of the challengers that ran for sheriff. There's only one young lady who we're still in communication with. But somebody said this earlier, and I've been using this the last several months. My job is not only to build a coalition to be elected, and I'm going to work my tail off to get elected, but it's to build a coalition to have partnerships in place so that when I become the sheriff, you're going to look at the sheriff's department completely different. And I'm going to be very open about what we're doing. I'm going to be held accountable. That means every member of my department will be held accountable. I will comply with subpoenas. I will testify or in front of oversight, whatever it takes to regain that public trust. So that's me in a nutshell. I am very proud to be before you, and I would be very humbled and honored to receive your endorsement. So with that, I stand ready to open any or answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, there's several that came on into the chat. So I do want to say, everyone, I will be announcing in just 2 minutes the results of the election. And anyone, I said the meeting was over at 1. If you have another engagement, we won't be offended. But if you want to stay and hear from our new chief of police, our new sheriff will be having today, please, you're welcome to stay. So first question that came out for you was, well, I guess, I don't know, do you support the 4/5 ballot initiative? Would you be voting yes or no?
You know what? I'm still looking at that. But right now, it doesn't feel good for me going in as the sheriff to say that, because when you think about accountability and you look at what this sheriff's doing, if I was a supervisor, I'd want him out, period. He doesn't belong there. He has ruined public trust. But is it fair to do that to everybody coming in afterward? And that's what I'm looking at with my my team. So right now, if you're looking for an answer, I would lean more towards no, but I completely respect the 4 that have come forward. And I spoke to most of them and I told them, I don't know if I can be on board with you guys with this, because I become your sheriff. You're not going to have these issues. I'm going to be held accountable. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to comply with subpoenas. But hey, I got to tell you, with the way this sheriff's behaving, I don't think they had a choice in putting this forward. So you see where I'm coming from. I don't like it. I don't think you're going to need it when I'm in office, but I understand where they're coming from. And at the end of the day, I respect the will of the voters. It's going to be up to the voters. And it's unfortunate that it's going to be at the same time they are going to be having a choice to elect me.
Ingrid, can you read some of the questions? I'm going to go into Election Buddy and clean something up, Carol.
In the chat. Yeah, hold on. Yeah. I have to see the chat. Sorry.
Someone asked.
Let me see it.
I see one about Gascon, and I can answer that as you guys are looking at the rest of them.
Actually, you can see the chat. So
yeah. So my position on the Gascon recall, I don't believe in recalls. I didn't vote for when Governor Newsom was being to me, it's nonsense. The voters voted. They voted for our governor. They voted for our DA. Eventually, in what is it, 2 years, if they don't like the job he's doing, they have a right to go to the ballot box and make him leave. How much money are we going to spend? Money that can go to prevention and intervention programs or other very important things. But here's a reality. We have a sheriff who refuses to take responsibility for the increases in crime and making himself accountable for the crime increases. Instead, he's blaming the DA, which I think is inappropriate, and all the Board of Supervisors. Now, do I agree with everything the DA is doing? No. But you know what? When I was a chief in Long Beach, I could pick up the phone and call him, and we could have an adult conversation about agreements or disagreements. And we had a working relationship. That's what the voters expect of all of their elected officials, and that's what you'll get with me as your sheriff. There is a sheriff's substation on the west side in Marina del Rey, yet there is very little collaboration with the city and the other LA communities, if I got that right. I'm hearing that consistently when I'm going throughout the county, listening to community members that they don't feel like the sheriff's department works for them. They feel like it's the other way around. That has to change. To me, if we have a contract with an area, I need to treat you like a customer, which means I need to listen to your concerns and I need to address them. And then if I'm not addressing them, you have a right to look for policing services elsewhere. That's how I'm going to approach it. Each captain of each station will be held accountable to make sure that the priorities that the community members within their area of responsibility is dealt with. And then I'm going to have a system in place where if that is not happening, that captain's going to get an audience with me. And I'm going to ask, why is this happening? And if there's not a good reason, they're going to be replaced. At the end of the day, community will come first. And the needs, it can be violent crime in one area. It can be car racing or speeding in another area. Whatever the issue is, we're here to work with you collaboratively. Okay, trying to go back to the chat here to see if I can get more here. Oh.
Let's see. Let me see. I'm back. That's what we said. Do you believe that the sheriff should be appointed rather than elected?
No, I think the sheriff should be elected by the people in the county of Los Angeles. Let the people decide who they want as their leader. Again, the guy in office now is a poster child for everything negative about law enforcement. So he's not leading by example. With me, I would be completely different than what you have now. And I see something down here too, along with that, about would Robert Luna be beholden to this board of supervisors? Again, for whoever's asking that, go back to the way I worked with the mayor and the 9 council members in the city of Long Beach. When you're governing, you're not always going to agree with all of the elected officials, but our job is to work things out. And sometimes you're going to get what you want and sometimes you're not. But you will never see me in front of a television talking poorly about any elected official. I have so much respect, especially now that I've been campaigning for the last 9 months, of the hard work it takes to do this. They want what's best. And our values, it could be just a little different, but let's work it out together. Work with them. And that's what I did. And that's what I expect to do as your sheriff. I'm not going to, if the residents want one thing and the supervisors want another thing, we'll figure it out together. I won't be calling them names though. And that's why, by the way, they're all endorsing me, because they know they can work with me. And I've already had some disagreements with them, but none of you have heard about it because we're doing it professionally behind the scenes.
Hey, Robert, here's a really current question, really important question, coming actually from my daughter, Miranda Robin. How would you talk to the early childhood education community about safety in their community and what we can do? What can you do?
The first thing I do is I would thank them for what they're doing, because I'll tell you what, I've been in this business for 36 years, and if I've learned anything, is a lot of the issues we deal with in policing from a foundation perspective come from early childhood. The challenges, child abuse, poverty, the lack of education, the lack of healthcare, mental health care. So to me, that when I mentioned earlier about dealing with crime in a very, very different manner, we have to be at the table with other service providers in government and non-government, because that's the only way we're going to start solving these very complex issues.
But how do we keep our children safe? How do we keep them safe? Look what's happening in schools.
So are you asking that question from like an active shooter perspective?
Miranda? You have to unmute.
I was actually, hi, I'm Miranda Robin. Thank you for what you're doing. I was asking more from what can we do as my students, they like to play cops and robbers. They like to talk about police. They like to be the policeman or stuff like that. And sometimes they're like, all police are bad. Some think police are good. So I want to know what message I can put out to them of what the police are actually doing in our city so that I can relay it to them.
Thank you for clarifying that. I misunderstood the question. I apologize for that. No, that what you're talking about is so important. And for me, if we can partner with the institutions and have deputies in uniform come and visit the classrooms and
That would be
talk
awesome.
about, if I'll tell you what, this is why I wanted to become a police officer. In a classroom, I saw a deputy come in one day and I became enamored with that uniform.
Mhm.
And even though my family did not like the police and I was ingrained that the police were not good, something in me said, you know what, that can't be. And I challenged my thought process. And that's where I say my journey through law enforcement wasn't easy, but it is critical that whether we're in a preschool classroom, I was in first grade when I saw that uniform, and look at the impact. I wouldn't be sitting in front of you if it wasn't for that deputy that visited that classroom. It's critical to me. And putting ourselves, a deputy that looks like them, male, female, African-American, Hispanic, Asian descent, you name it, LGBTQ, whatever it is. If somebody looks like you, it's like you start dreaming, I could do that. And that's how you start changing policing.
Awesome. Thank you.
So are there any other questions before we get down to this? There's several people that still haven't voted, it seems. Ingrid, are there any more questions in the chat?
I see something at the end there about separating politics and policing. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. Anytime you get law enforcement that starts getting too much into the politics of the job, we start getting in trouble. And I know being a police chief and being a sheriff is different because it's an elected position, but as a police chief, for the 7 years I did it, it was ingrained in me that I had to be apolitical. You can look where my values stood as to how I policed. That is very well documented. But the fact that it should be a somewhat nonpartisan position, it's about justice for all. And I really do believe that.
Okay, well, I think I'm going to, let me see, wait. I'm sorry, this seems to happen. Let me check there's still 1 minute left for the extended election because a couple of people apparently didn't get their ballot. So there's one more thing. Oh, here was a good one from Dorothy Reich. Do you think armed police should do traffic stops, or should some other entity handle them?
I'm all for listening for different ways of doing things. Again, I don't believe in the status quo. And when I go into the sheriff's department, someone tells me, hey, we're doing it this way because we've always done it this way. To me, that's a red flag. Let's look at different ways of doing things. Traffic stops are very dangerous. A lot of police officers get killed doing traffic stops. And I think we are listening to the community. RIPA data, racial profiling data is coming out now through DOJ, and we're studying the pluses and negatives of that. In Long Beach, I did not like the results of what I saw. So we ended up putting together an MOU with an organization called the Policing Equity. And they were doing some work in Berkeley, California. I think every agency really needs to look at how we're doing things, how we're training, and the stops that we're making. and then do audits on them. And now that we wear body worn cameras, this will become a lot easier for us to do. So let's look at things differently. But I also don't subscribe to the issue because a lot of people are saying we don't want traffic stops done at all. Have you seen the news lately of how many traffic collisions we're seeing? The fatalities, the collision are going up. That's data we cannot ignore. And is that happening because police officers are making less traffic stops? So let's look at the data and let's come to a solution together and figure something out. But I'm open to doing it differently. But I want to make sure at the end of the day, public safety is a top priority. That if any one of your family members are out on that street, that somebody is not just going down the street 100 miles per hour running a red light.
So then with that, I just want to thank you very much. You're on our ballot. So I had a couple questions here that a couple people wanted to know where were the ballots, but you didn't register, and you have to register to be put on the ballot list. And I sent out several emails with cutoff times. It was going to be last night, but I gave people a chance to even do it by 9 o'clock this morning. And if you weren't on the list by 9, it's really hard to add people. And then I still tried to do it, but a couple people just, it was too late. I'm so sorry. So I'm there, I'm on Election Buddy and I'm waiting and they're not giving me the results. It keeps saying running. It's supposed to be over at 1:30. It is now 1:32. Come on, let's see the results. Let's see, close now. Yes, because, oh no, sorry, something went wrong and we're looking into it. I love this. Results. Results. Okay. Okay, for LA County Supervisor, District 3, Lindsay Horvath is the winner with 67.7% of the vote. So congratulations to Lindsay. On LA City Council, Erin Darling is our endorsed candidate with 80.6% of the vote. And Robert Luna is approved and endorsed as our sheriff's candidate with 93.5% of the vote. So congratulations to our West LA Dem Club endorsed candidates. I'm you know, it's how it is. Those of you who didn't prevail, don't give up in your race. Of course you won't. It's the Dem Club. But yeah. Thank you for coming, for being part of it. And congratulations to Lindsay, Erin, and Robert, Chief Robert, Luna, and we'll see you all next forum. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. And
thank you, Cara. Thank you for all the hard work that goes into this, Cara. Thank you so, so much.
You're very welcome, and thank you for being my aid and partner in this. Thanks,
trying.
everybody. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.